I have been married to Zeke for 4 years and we have no children. He said he wants to divorce me. I asked him if the reason for the divorce was because we don't have children or because of Lara. After a long silence, his low voice carried a hint of exhaustion. Lara has returned to the country, and I don't want to hide it from you. She really needs me right now. What about me, Zeke? What about me? He loosened his tie, a gesture I knew all too well. He always did that when he was feeling frustrated. You already knew about her and me anyway. He smiled bitterly. It's better for both of us to split up now. He sounded like he was negotiating a business deal. The house, the car, the money, everything is yours. Just sign the papers. These are mine. I pretended to be calm and continued painting. I don't agree to divorce. Hina, how long are you going to keep deceiving yourself? He suddenly leaned forward, his long fingers clamping my chin, forcing me to look him in the eyes. All the kindness I've shown you over the years was just an act. The person I love is Lara, and always have been. He spoke slowly and deliberately, his eyes devoid of their usual tenderness, filled instead with a resoluteness that was unfamiliar to me. I suddenly broke free from his grip. I said I don't agree to a divorce. I heard my voice sound unusually calm. Zeke, you need to get this straight, you're still my husband, and what you're doing with Lara is called cheating. Zeke sneered, unwilling to argue with me any further. He slammed the door shut, and the roar of a car engine pierced the night sky. 3 days later, his secretary came with some people to collect his belongings. Ma'am. The secretary stood at the entrance, nervously pushing her glasses up. Mr. Zeke asked us to come and pick up something. I asked the secretary, where is he? Why didn't he come himself? Mr. Zeke has been very busy lately. He moved to Miling Road. He said he wanted to be with Lara. Anger surged in my heart, and I immediately drove to Miling Road. The villa on Miling Road was a wedding anniversary gift from Zeke last year. Zeke has so many houses, but Lara insisted on this one because she said she liked the blue jacaranda trees in front of the villa. The electronic lock emitted a shrill warning sound. The door code had been changed. Zeke. I pounded on the door, my knuckles quickly turning red. The door opened, and Lara stood inside, her silk strapless dress hanging loosely off her shoulders, revealing large patches of snow-white skin. Her black hair hung down to her chest like seaweed, and there were still traces of red marks on her collarbone. Where's my husband? I asked, my voice trembling. Hina. She widened her eyes slightly, her fingers unconsciously twirling her hair. Zeke went to work. Do you need something? Then why are you here? Don't you know this is my house? You're trespassing. Lara's eyes instantly reddened. She bit her lower lip, her voice as soft as a feather. This is my home with Zeke. As she spoke, a single tear fell perfectly. What a talented actress. I called the villa manager. My house has been illegally occupied. Bring people over immediately and get that woman out of there. The manager sounded very awkward on the phone. The phone was interrupted by the screeching sound of brakes. Zeke strode over, his Armani suit wrapped against the cold wind, and shielded Lara behind him. Hina. He pushed me, and I stumbled backward, my high heels catching on the steps. A sharp pain shot from my ankle to my temple. What the hell are you doing? Lara began to sob softly, tears falling like broken pearls. Zeke immediately lowered his head and kissed the top of her head. Leave immediately before I call the police. His voice was as cold as ice. My lawyer will prepare the divorce agreement. You can name your conditions. Perhaps it was the rush of adrenaline, but Zeke's voice sounded as if it were coming through a thick sheet of frosted glass. Suddenly, my vision went black, and I fell heavily to the ground, feeling no pain at all. Before I slipped into darkness, I thought I saw Zeke's panicked face. When she woke up, she found herself lying in the hospital, seeing only her mother's red, swollen eyes and her mother-in-law Maggie's tense profile. She was shouting into the phone, "Get your ass over here right now. You've brought shame on our family." Hina. Seeing that I had woken up, my mother's trembling hand caressed my face. You scared me to death. I tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper came out. Maggie quickly walked over and handed me a straw cup. The warm water slid down my throat, and I felt a pang of sadness. Hina, you're going to be a mother. Maggie's voice was unusually soft. The words hit me like a thunderclap. I instinctively placed my hand on my flat stomach and looked at Maggie in disbelief. Mom. I choked out, looking at Maggie. Zeke. Mom knows you're hurt. Don't worry, your dad and I will always support you. She held my hand. Mom. Tears welled up in my eyes. Zeke. He wants to divorce me, and he's with Lara. Even my mom knows. That scoundrel was called in by the board for questioning. She pulled out her phone, the screen displaying news of GS stock plummeting. Someone anonymously reported this morning that he had an affair and remarried. The ward door suddenly burst open. Zeke rushed in, his suit disheveled, with a clear handprint on his left cheek. He looked at me as if I had botched a contract. Did you leak the information? Maggie grabbed the vase and threw it at him, shattering it at his feet. You beast. Hina fainted while pregnant, and that's the first thing you say? The first time I met Zeke, I was 23 years old, had just graduated from art school, and was teaching art at a middle school. Agnes introduced him enthusiastically. Zeke, he just got back from studying in the US, and he's so handsome. His parents just want their son to find a stable, quiet, and pretty job. They don't care about family background or anything like that. As I looked out the car window at the scenery rushing by, I felt nothing. After my father passed away, my mother raised me alone, and her greatest wish was for me to marry well. The restaurant was the most expensive French restaurant in town. As I opened the door, I saw him immediately. He was handsome with striking features and a youthful spirit. Hello. He stood up, towering over me by half a head, with a faint scent of perfume mixed with a hint of mint. The entire meal was tasteless. Zeke was distracted and always answered questions with and okay. It was obvious that he had been forced by his family to meet me. After dinner, Zeke offered to drive me home. No, thank you. I'll take a taxi, I declined. He nodded and forced a half-hearted smile. All right, I've got something to do. I'll be going now. Be careful on your way home. Watching him walk away without looking back toward the bright yellow sports car, I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. 3 years later, I was 26. Before leaving work on Friday, the principal mysteriously called me over. Hina, there's a blind date tomorrow. The other party is very well qualified. You must go. I was about to refuse, but the principal lowered his voice and said, his family donated the new library to our school, so just consider it a favor to the school. The next day, I threw on a beige sweater and jeans and went to the appointed place, an antique tea room. As I pushed open the door, the aroma of tea wafted toward me. The man by the window looked up at the sound, his suit neatly tailored, his features sharp and defined. Behind his gold-rimmed glasses, his eyes were deep and piercing. I paused for a moment. This man seemed familiar. Hina, please sit down, he said, rising to his feet, his voice low and melodious. I racked my brain but couldn't remember where I had seen him before. After 3 rounds of tea, I couldn't help but ask, have we met before? He smiled slightly and said, 3 years ago, we had dinner together. You were wearing a light blue dress. How? I stammered. A big change? Zeke chuckled. When I first came back from abroad, I was still going through my rebellious phase. Then my father fell ill, and I took over the family business. He spoke slowly and deliberately, his eyes focused, a stark contrast to the restless young man I remembered. So, this was also arranged by your mother? I couldn't help but ask. Zeke's long fingers paused slightly, and a hint of helplessness flashed in his eyes. The corners of his lips curved into a gentle smile. My mother does indeed like Hina very much. Outside the cafe window, light snow was falling. Zeke reached out and pulled my scarf closer around me. His fingertips were slightly cool, and when they touched my neck, I shivered. "Are you cold?" he asked softly. I shook my head and looked at his profile illuminated by the snowlight. Over the past 3 months, this young man who had once made me sneer had gradually won me over with his tender care and attention. As long as he doesn't have to travel for work, he always shows up at the school gate on time every day. His black Mercedes sits quietly under the sycamore tree, and he leans against the car, always holding a bouquet of fresh flowers in his hands. Sometimes they're roses, and sometimes they're my favorite baby's breath. Hina. That's how he called me when we first met, his voice distant yet polite. Hina. Later, he called me that again, his voice filled with unmistakable tenderness. At Christmas, he took me to Japan and said he would teach me how to ski. That day, he knelt down on one knee in the snow. He pulled out the blue box from HW, and the diamond ring inside sparkled brightly in the snowy night. Hina, will you marry me? Snowflakes clung to his eyelashes, and his peach-colored eyes were filled with a seriousness I had never seen before. At that moment, I could clearly hear my heart pounding. Okay. Later, I found out that he had been planning this proposal for an entire month. Just like our marriage, it was a carefully planned performance from the very beginning. After we got married, Zeke was the textbook definition of a husband. Every morning when I woke up, there was always a cup of honey water at the perfect temperature on my bedside table. His figure standing in the closet tying his tie was outlined by the morning light, tall and straight. When he heard the noise, he turned around and smiled at me. Hina, sleep a little longer? His schedule is completely transparent to me. Company meetings, business trips, and even information about people he is entertaining are sent to my phone in great detail. When my mother had heart bypass surgery, he stayed with me in the hospital room all night. My mother's attending physician is my high school classmate, he said, gripping the steering wheel on the way home. From now on, I'll accompany her to her follow-up appointments every Wednesday. But despite being such a perfect husband, he always reminds me of a certain moment from our wedding night. When the banquet was over, he loosened his tie, leaned against the hotel terrace, and lit a cigarette. I overheard him on the phone, "We're already married, and you're still not satisfied?" The night breeze carried his rare tone of irritation. As the cigarette flickered, I saw the coldness in his eyes. That night, he entered me with extreme tenderness, but at the moment of climax, he unconsciously murmured a strange name. Lara. Later, I rarely attended his friends' gatherings. It wasn't that I didn't try to fit in, but the boisterous laughter after a few drinks always made me feel uncomfortable. Zeke once ran a red light for Lara. That's nothing. He drove through an avalanche in the Alps. Someone raised their glass in a drunken stupor, only to be elbowed by the person next to them and sheepishly stop. Amidst the silence, Zeke calmly peeled a shrimp for me. Try it, you like drunken shrimp. His fingertips were stained with sauce, and his smile was flawless, as if the awkwardness had never happened. I tentatively asked Maggie, "Mom, do you know who Lara is?" Her hands, which were arranging flowers, paused imperceptibly. "She's just a classmate of Zeke's from abroad." "They dated?" I asked. Maggie put a rose in the vase, avoiding my gaze. "It's all in the past." She suddenly turned to me. "Hina, when are you two planning to have children?" "Mom wants to hold a grandchild." I lowered my head and stirred my teacup, my ears burning. Zeke has been very busy with work lately. I first met Lara at the coffee shop downstairs from GS Company. My mother-in-law Maggie asked me to go shopping with her to buy me a birthday present. She said she would pick me up from school after her meeting at 3 o'clock, but I had a class change that afternoon, so I decided to wait for her downstairs at the company first. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a beautiful woman sitting by the window, across from Maggie. "Auntie, please." The girl's voice was trembling with tears. "Zeke and I truly love each other." Maggie stirred her coffee expressionlessly. "Lara, my son is already married. My daughter-in-law is well-behaved and sensible, and they have a good relationship. Can you give me a chance? I beg you." "Lara, stop bothering him." Isn't 8 million enough? Besides, being a third wheel isn't something to be proud of. But you know very well. The girl dug her fingernails deeply into her palm. It was you who forced him to marry that person. I'm his mother. Maggie's voice suddenly turned cold. I know what's best for him. Auntie. Don't say another word. Lara, hurry up and leave. Don't come back here again. I'll have security throw you out. Lara was in tears, as if she had been wronged beyond measure. She stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked out, looking a little dazed. I immediately hid. On that birthday, Maggie gave me a villa in the western suburbs and suddenly said she would organize an art exhibition for me. I burst out laughing. Mom, I'm just an ordinary art teacher. How could I possibly hold an art exhibition? She said that her daughter-in-law was certainly qualified. Hina, you can't be so modest. You have to. Maggie trailed off. Later, I found out that they had been in love for many years, and I was one of the obstacles preventing them from being together. Maggie's unfinished sentence should have been, you have to hold on to his heart. As a young boy, Zeke curled up on the floor of a Paris apartment, his right hand clutching a broken wine glass. Blood trickled down his wrist, dripping onto the engagement invitation Lara had left behind. She promised. His trembling fingers traced the invitation. She said she'd wait for me once I took over GS. When Maggie snatched the glass shard, blood had already soaked through his shirt. She would always remember her son's expression at that moment, like an abandoned cub, shivering in the cold winter wind of Paris. Zeke. She pressed down hard on her son's bleeding wrist. You're willing to give up your life for a woman? Zeke laughed hollowly. Mom, you're right. I'm such a joke. Dad, Mom, please save Lara. Upon returning home, Zeke knelt before his parents, his forehead pressed against the cold marble floor. Lara was forced into it. All it takes is 80 million, and she can break off the engagement. Maggie picked up the blue and white porcelain teacup and watched the tea leaves float and sink in the cup. It was as if she could see through Lara's tricks. Son, when will you ever wake up? All these years, you've been completely manipulated by that woman. This time is different. Zeke snapped his head up. Last time it was 5 million to pay off gambling debts, and the time before that it was 30 million to cover company losses. Maggie sneered, this time it's 80 million. Next time, are you going to give her the entire GS? Mom, I swear this is the last time, and Lara didn't lie to me. Zeke suddenly grabbed his mother's hand, the gauze on his wrist seeping with bright red blood. Lara's father had a heart attack and was hospitalized. Lara. Maggie shook off Zeke's hand, heartbroken. This is the last time I'll agree to you, but I have conditions. I'll agree to anything. You must cut all ties with Lara. Settle down with the girl I've chosen for you, marry her, and become a qualified GS heir. Though it was painful, Zeke closed his eyes and forced a bitter smile for the sake of his beloved Lara. It's just acting, isn't it? He'll do it. His greatest hobby is skiing. Every year from December to January, he always takes 2 months off to travel around the world's major ski resorts. The first year after we got married, I did go with him to Hokkaido. In the freezing cold, I was like a clumsy penguin, falling all over the beginner's slope and bruising myself all over. Zeke's friends laughed openly from the cable car. How come your sister-in-law doesn't even know how to brake? A girl with dyed blonde hair said with a smile. When Zeke taught Lara, she was ready to join the gang in 3 days. Zeke paused as he was helping me fasten my protective gear and said calmly, everyone learns at their own pace. When December arrived, Zeke began packing his skiing gear again. This year we're going to Switzerland, he said without looking up. The slopes in Engelberg are perfect for beginners like you. I let out a soft aha and absent-mindedly rubbed the doorframe with my fingers. This was the 3rd year he had said the same thing, and the 3rd year I hadn't gone. As he was leaving, he held my face in his hands and kissed me, his eyelashes casting a small shadow under my eyes. I'll miss you, he said, sounding so sincere that I almost believed him. Later, I realized that every snow season was his date season with Lara. And some of his so-called business trips abroad were just lies to cover up their private meetings. Until now, Lara has returned home after her divorce, and Zeke doesn't want to act anymore. He wants to leave me and return to the person he has been thinking about day and night. Smack. The crisp sound of a slap echoed through the hospital room. Zeke turned his head away, and a bright red handprint quickly appeared on his left cheek. He looked at his mother in disbelief, his lips trembling. "Mom, you hit me for her?" Maggie's hands were still trembling. She was truly the best mother-in-law in the world. She stood in front of my hospital bed like a lioness protecting her cubs. "Zeke, are you even human? Hina is carrying your child. I didn't know she was pregnant." Zeke suddenly raised his voice, took a deep breath, and said, "If I had known earlier." "If you had known earlier, you wouldn't have brought up divorce?" I interrupted him softly, suddenly feeling extremely exhausted. "Or would you have been more careful to hide it if you had known earlier? Hina, you're really calculating." Zeke wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sneered, "Why did you have to get pregnant at this time?" His reaction was so cold, as if he had no feelings for our child at all. I clenched the bedsheet, the fabric crumpling in my palm. "Stop this," I heard myself say in a voice that was eerily calm. "Zeke, I agree. Let's get a divorce. Have the lawyer bring the papers over right now. I'll sign them." Maggie spun around suddenly. "Hina, you're pregnant." "Mom, let him go." I gently stroked my belly, where a new life was beginning to grow. "And let me go too." Zeke froze, clearly not expecting me to suddenly give in. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting mottled shadows on his face. I suddenly remembered our first date, when he had stood waiting for me in the shade of a sycamore tree. "I will have the baby," I continued, "but it must come with me." "But the children?" Maggie's eyes flashed with struggle. "Mom, Zeke and Lara will have many children in the future," I said softly. "I may only have this one. Mom, can you grant me this wish?" Maggie glared at Zeke. "I will never acknowledge that woman or the bastard she gave birth to. Hina, it's your mother's fault." I failed to raise my son properly. My mother remained silent, her eyes red and tearful, clutching my hand tightly. Zeke remained silent for a long time. Maggie was so angry that she was shaking all over. She grabbed the water cup on the bedside table and threw it at him again, shouting, "Get out of here." The water cup exploded at Zeke's feet, sending shards of glass flying everywhere. He looked down at the shards and suddenly smiled. "Good, very good. Hina, you won." After agreeing to divorce, everything seemed to return to normal, and neither Zeke nor I caused any trouble. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital, and the doctor advised me to rest and take it easy. My mother decided to move in to take care of me, and Maggie also hired the best nanny and nutritionist for me. However, Zeke's divorce agreement still hadn't arrived. I heard that when I fainted in front of them, Zeke was busy comforting Lara, who was frightened, and it was the secretary who rushed over and took me to the hospital. The hospital asked them to notify my family, and the secretary hesitated before calling Maggie. The love between husband and wife had grown so cold that there was really no point in continuing the relationship. When I returned to school, my colleagues' gazes felt like searchlights. I met their sympathetic and curious stares with composure and even took the initiative to share some amusing stories from my pregnancy. Actually, I'm not that pitiful. After all, I have a lot of money and a child in my womb. Gradually, those looks turned into admiration. Hina, Misley, the most gossipy teacher, came over during recess. "Your ex-husband's company is trending again." I glanced at my phone and saw that Zeke had been photographed accompanying Lara to the emergency room late at night. "How interesting," I said, closing the page. I'm off to class. It is said that Zeke has been overwhelmed recently. The board of directors has issued an ultimatum: if the stock price drops further, an emergency plan will be implemented. Meanwhile, I heard that Lara is very upset because I am carrying his child. He promised to have children only with her. I found that amusing. At 28 weeks pregnant, it was Maggie's 60th birthday. Even though Zeke and I had been separated for 6 months, I still decided to attend. Maggie treated me like her own daughter, and that bond would not change because of a broken marriage. The reflection in the mirror showed a gaunt face, with a prominent pregnant belly standing out starkly against my slender frame. During the prenatal checkup, the doctor had shared the exciting news of twins, but now it felt like a double burden. I gently placed my hands on my belly, feeling the movements of the 2 little lives inside. I chose a loose-fitting lotus-colored lawn dress that barely covered my protruding belly, and applied a light layer of makeup to conceal my pale complexion. Before I left, my mother worriedly draped a shawl around me and said, "Come back early if you can't hold out." Maggie personally stood at the hotel entrance to greet me. As soon as I got out of the car, she quickly walked over to help me. The wrinkles at the corners of her eyes were deeper, but she was still elegant and graceful. "Happy birthday, Mom." I handed her the carefully selected gift. Maggie's eyes welled up with tears as she gently held my waist. "You're so heavy, you shouldn't have." Just as we were talking, there was a sudden commotion coming from the banquet hall. We turned to look and saw Zeke holding back a woman in red. It was Lara. She had somehow managed to sneak into the birthday banquet and was now pulling at Zeke's sleeve with tears in her eyes. "Who let her in?" Maggie's voice turned cold, and she immediately signaled to the security guard. I instinctively took a half step back, and the baby in my womb suddenly kicked me hard, causing me to gasp in pain. "Hina? What's wrong?" Maggie looked at my pained expression and was very worried. The sound made Zeke turn around, and the moment he saw me, he froze. He looked thinner after not seeing him for half a year. Zeke's gaze fell on my protruding abdomen, and his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Lara followed his gaze and, noticing my pregnant belly, her carefully crafted expression twisted instantly. She shrieked, "Zeke! You said you'd take care of it." Maggie shouted, "Security, please escort this uninvited guest out." Zeke, however, seemed oblivious to the commotion and walked straight toward me. His lips trembled as he reached out, as if to touch my stomach, but stopped midair. "Hina." His voice suddenly caught in his throat. Maggie alertly stood in front of me, afraid that her son would do something inappropriate. "Hello," I nodded slightly, my voice calm and without a hint of emotion. "Long time no see." We were only 3 steps apart, but it felt like we were separated by an entire winter. I asked Dylan, and he said you haven't been doing well lately? Every time I went for a prenatal checkup over the past 6 months, my mother and Maggie took turns accompanying me to the hospital. I never saw him. I never expected him to contact my obstetrician privately. "It's okay, you're just getting bigger, so you're bound to feel tired." "School. Should we ask for a day off first?" "The students are too rowdy. Staying at home makes it easier to think too much." I smiled. I like going to school. This conversation was so polite it was laughable, as if we weren't the parents of children, but old acquaintances who happened to meet again. "By the way," I looked up at him, "your lawyer still hasn't contacted me." Zeke froze, looking awkward. "There's been a lot going on at the company lately. I can have my lawyer contact you." Maggie coughed once, took my arm, and said, "Hina, let's go inside and sit down. Standing too long isn't good for your back." Having said that, she turned to Zeke, her eyes suddenly turning cold. "Take that woman away." Her voice was low, but every word was like ice. "Otherwise, don't call me mother anymore." With all eyes on me, I forced myself to exchange pleasantries with a few elders before asking Maggie if I could leave first. She nodded in understanding, and as I was about to call the driver, my handbag slipped and fell to the ground. I tried to bend over, but my protruding belly made this simple movement difficult. Just then, a pair of familiar hands picked up the handbag first. "Here you go," Zeke's voice rang out above my head. I looked up and met his slightly weary eyes. "Thank you." I took the handbag and smiled politely. "I just wanted the driver to pick me up." "I'll take you back." His tone was firm. "I have something I want to talk to you about." Maggie stood to one side, her gaze shifting between us. Finally, she gently patted my hand and said, "Let Zeke take you home. Be careful on the road." Zeke carefully helped me out, his palm warm and dry, yet maintaining just the right distance. When we reached the parking lot, the night breeze brushed against my cheeks, bringing with it the coolness of early autumn. To others, the two of them must have looked like a loving couple, eagerly awaiting the arrival of a new life. "Are you cold?" he asked, taking off his suit jacket to put it around my shoulders. I shook my head, but he insisted on wrapping me in his coat. The familiar scent instantly enveloped me. Sitting in the passenger seat, he carefully adjusted the seat angle for me and checked that the seatbelt wasn't too tight around my stomach. These once familiar gestures of thoughtfulness now brought a lump to my throat. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, his voice low. I turned to look out the window at the neon lights flowing by and said softly, "It's okay. Actually, you're right. It's better for both of us to part ways. I've been back many times, but I didn't dare go upstairs. Lara needs you more now. You should spend more time with her." I interrupted calmly. The red light came on, and he turned to look at me with a complicated look in his eyes. "Hina, Lara and I have known each other for too long. When we were young, I did so many foolish things for her. I didn't really want to hear about their love story." "Zeke," I interrupted him. "I've already agreed to the divorce. There's no need to explain any more." "No, I just wanted to say." He took a deep breath. "Those obsessions, maybe they were wrong from the start." Raindrops suddenly hit the windshield like countless tiny silver needles. It was raining. I couldn't help but laugh. "Zeke, what do you mean by saying that now? You don't want a divorce anymore?" "For the past 6 months, I've been thinking every day, why did I rush to help her instead of you when you fainted that day? Do you know?" His voice suddenly softened. "I keep all your prenatal checkup reports in my desk drawer. Every time I see the ultrasound photos, here." He pressed his chest. "It feels like someone stabbed me." I reached out to open the car door, but found it locked. "Let me out." Zeke's hand hovered over the unlock button. "It's raining too hard." I saw my mother waiting for me at the entrance of the neighborhood with an umbrella, and I didn't want to hear any more. "Mom." I slammed the car window down and shouted toward the door. My mother heard me and turned around to see me sitting in Zeke's car. She immediately ran over in a panic. Zeke unbuckled his seatbelt and rushed out of the car. "Let me carry you back." He bent down to pick me up, and rainwater dripped from his hair onto my face. "Get away." I pushed his solid chest hard, but he didn't budge. My mother hurried over and tried to separate us. "Zeke, you first." "Mom, she can't get wet." Zeke's voice was almost pleading. "I don't want him to touch me." "Mom, help me get him away." I cried out, my heavy body struggling futilely in the seat. The baby in my womb seemed to sense my emotions and kicked violently. Her mother gently placed her hand on Zeke's arm and said softly, "Zeke. The doctor said she can't get excited right now." He slowly took a step back and raised his hands. Okay, I'll go. Don't cry, I'll leave right now." When my mother carefully helped me out of the car, she said, "Walk slowly." She held the umbrella and let me lean most of my body on her frail shoulders. I handed Tate the signed divorce agreement with all my demands, which he had promised to fulfill. I instructed the lawyer to make sure Zeke signed it before coming to see me. Half a month later, Tate called. "Hina, Mr. Zeke is either in a meeting or out of the country. I can't get a hold of him. Go wait at Miling Road. He always goes there." Tate met the legendary Lara at the villa on Miling Road. She was wrapped in a silk robe, a long cigarette between her fingertips. "Who are you?" she asked, exhaling a smoke ring and looking up and down at the lawyer in his well-tailored suit. Tate handed over his business card. "I'm Hina's lawyer. I'm here to deliver the divorce agreement." "Oh?" Lara suddenly smiled, her fingers painted with nail polish clutching the business card. "You found this place? So you mean?" Zeke is avoiding signing? The lawyer maintained professional silence. The cigarette between her fingertips emitted a wisp of smoke. She suddenly snorted, "What a joke." She blew a smoke ring at the lawyer. "He can't wait to get out of here. The whole world knows that the person he really wants to marry is me." Tate pushed his glasses up without changing his expression. "Lara, I was just asked to deliver some documents." "Then I'll take it for Zeke." Her slender fingers tapped on the agreement. "You go back and tell Hina for me. Even if she's pregnant, so what? Zeke doesn't even want to look at her anymore." "Sorry." Tate took a step back without showing any emotion. "Hina insists that Mr. Zeke must sign it in person." Lara's face darkened instantly. She grabbed her phone and dialed a number. "Come back here right now." Zeke's voice could be heard faintly on the other end of the line, trying to explain. "If you don't come back, I'll kill myself." She hung up abruptly, turned to the lawyer, and smiled triumphantly. "Just wait, he'll be here soon." The lawyer stood silently in the entranceway, his gaze sweeping over the overturned wine bottles and broken glass in the living room, silently wondering how Zeke could be so infatuated with such a crazy woman. 20 minutes later, Zeke returned as expected. When he saw Tate standing at the entrance, his pupils contracted sharply. "Zeke," Lara wrapped her arms around him like a snake, "just sign the papers. I feel so sorry for you being harassed by that bitch." Zeke's gaze fell on Hina's signature on the agreement. The handwriting that he had once praised as gentle as she is now looked sharp enough to cut through the paper. He recalled that rainy day when she didn't even want to hear his confession, and now she had sent a divorce agreement through a lawyer. Yes, someone as gentle and calm as Hina really shouldn't be dragged into such a mess by him. One weekend, he found himself driving to their old house again. He stood downstairs and watched her leave. Hina sat alone under the shade of a tree in the park, sketching. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on her body. Her pregnant belly was visible beneath her loose dress, forming a gentle curve. She painted with such concentration, occasionally stroking her belly and smiling at the canvas. He sat in the car all afternoon until dusk fell. "Mr. Zeke?" Tate handed him a pen. Zeke took it, the tip trembling slightly as he hovered over his signature. The pen finally came to a stop, and the 3 characters Zeke were written in a flowing, elegant script. The last stroke tore through the paper with a sharp sound. "Hina, Mr. Zeke has signed." Tate's call came in just as I was organizing the baby's clothes. "Thank you for your hard work." I hung up the phone and suddenly noticed a tear falling onto the little sock in my hand. Mom hugged me close. "Everything will be okay," she said, stroking my back. "My Hina deserves better." After the lawyer left, Lara immediately wrapped her arms around Zeke's neck. "Zeke, we're finally free. Let's go back to Paris, shall we? We can have the wedding there." Zeke stared blankly at the coffee table where the divorce agreement had once been. His fingertips still retained the sensation of signing it. All the memories of his years with Hina seemed to vanish in an instant when he signed his name. But he couldn't help wanting to hold on to it. He desperately tried to recall all the happiness and peace Hina had brought him as his wife after they got married. He realized that the 4 years he had spent with Hina were the most peaceful and happiest years of his life. He had once promised Lara that marrying another woman was merely a formality, but from the marriage contract to the desire for children, all the uncontrollable feelings were genuine. The one who truly wanted to have children with Hina was himself. "What are you spacing out for?" Lara pinched his arm in annoyance. "We should celebrate." She picked up her glass. Zeke looked out the floor-to-ceiling window at the darkening sky and suddenly said, "Lara, I'll drive you back to Paris." "Really?" Her eyes lit up, and she leaned in close, the scent of perfume mixed with alcohol wafting toward him. "We'll do it tomorrow. It's just you." He gently pushed her away, his voice sounding as tired as if he had aged 10 years. "Every day I spend with you is either cleaning up your mess or soothing your emotions. I'm really exhausted." Lara's smile froze on her face. "What do you mean?" All I can think about is Hina right now. Zeke smiled bitterly. I was the one who brought up divorce first, but now. The red wine glass shattered on the marble floor with a loud crash, and the dark red wine spread like blood. Lara hugged Zeke like a madwoman. You only love me. Her fingernails scratched red marks on his neck. You're not allowed to think about anyone else but me. Zeke pried her fingers apart one by one. Lara, go back to Paris. I'll have my secretary book a ticket. This house belongs to Hina. We have to give it back to her. Zeke. Lara's scream rang out behind him, accompanied by the sound of porcelain shattering against the wall. He didn't look back, gently closing the door behind him. Back at his parents' house, Zeke knelt before them once more. Dad, Mom, I was wrong. Maggie trembled as she helped her son to his feet, noticing the bloodshot corners of his eyes. We're divorced. She won't forgive me. He couldn't look his mother in the eye. Zeke's father sighed deeply, stood up with his cane, and said, It's our family who has wronged Hina. On the eve of my due date, I was admitted to the hospital, lying in a hospital bed like a beached whale, my belly so big that I couldn't breathe on my own and had to wear an oxygen mask. My mother and Maggie stayed by my side, and the best doctors were on standby. Zeke was there too, pacing outside my room, not daring to come in. Are you ready? The nurse pushed in the gurney, and my mother suddenly burst into tears. Maggie wrung her silk scarf into a salty rag. The moment the delivery room door closed, I heard a dull thud at the end of the hallway. Later, I found out that Zeke had punched the wall. When the first cry rang out, I was so exhausted that I only had time to see 2 little red bundles before being pushed into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, I saw Maggie happily holding her phone, video calling someone and saying that her brother looked like me and her sister looked like Zeke. I weakly turned my head and saw 2 wrinkled little creatures in the incubator whose features were so indistinct that I couldn't tell who they resembled. People kept calling Maggie to congratulate her, and she immediately decided to retire from GS and become a full-time grandmother. Zeke stood outside the hospital room, and Maggie called him in to see his child, but he didn't dare and just kept looking at my face. Seeing me nod, he ran over and asked which one was the daughter and which one was the son. The nurse pointed to the little guy kicking his legs on the left and said that was the sister. His eyes suddenly welled up with tears. She. Zeke's Adam's apple bobbed violently. Her eyebrows are like mine. Maggie rolled her eyes. What are you talking about? Newborns don't have eyebrows. Everyone laughed. Sunlight shone through the curtains onto the incubator, and the 2 little ones' skin glowed a pale golden color. Zeke secretly looked back at me, but I pretended not to notice and closed my eyes. The morning sun shone through the sheer curtains onto the baby bed. I gently rocked the twins' cradle, my phone screen still lit up with the acceptance email. The logo of the Brera Academy of Fine Arts sparkled in the morning light. I quit my job to go study in Italy with the kids. My mother and Maggie are coming with us. Zeke drove us to the airport, and Maggie asked him to take good care of the company and come visit us in Italy if he misses us. Zeke suddenly walked up to me. His Adam's apple bobbed a few times, and finally he asked softly, Can I give you a hug? Just as a farewell between friends. I nodded and hugged him. He wrapped his arms around my shoulders carefully, and I could feel his arms trembling slightly. Take care of yourself, I said softly. You will always be the children's father, and you are always welcome to visit them. When he let go of my hand, I saw his eyes redden. Then, can I come with you this time? Not this time. My little sister suddenly woke up in her stroller and reached out her little hand toward Zeke. He chased us all the way to the security checkpoint and finally stopped at the yellow caution line.